Good morning students. As you know, today is the first lecture of this course, biomass conversion and biorefinery. As I told you in our introduction slide, we will be covering two lectures basically dedicated to introduction. So, today is the first one. So, in which we will be covering world energy scenario, consumption pattern, fossil fuel depletion and environmental issues. So, a bit more elaborately I will tell you that what is actually how the fossil fuel depletion is taking place, what is the energy requirement, how renewables are taking shape into a big component in the next few years of energy consumption as well as production, and how the climate mitigation problems are also taking a shape with respect to global carbon dioxide this one sequestration. So, as you know, there are institutions such as the International Energy Agency, the US Energy Information Administration and the European Environmental Agency. So, these are the three agencies which record and publish energy data periodically. So, you get all these data, whatever today even I am discussing, mostly it has been taken from this data, their record. So, improved data and understanding of world energy consumption may reveal systematic trends and patterns which could help frame current energy issues and encourage movement towards collectively useful solutions. Now, the current policy scenario shows that what happens if the world continues along its present path without any additional changes in policy. So, in this scenario energy demand will rise by 1.3% each year. So, till 2040. So, this is how it is being predicted basically. So, the scenario charts a path fully aligned with the Paris agreement holding the rise in global temperature well below 2 degree centigrade. That is what is the Paris agreement said about that temperature rise should not be more than 2 degree centigrade, and they are still pursuing efforts and convincing all the signatories of this agreement that let us limit it to 1.5 degree centigrade. And electrification is emerging as the key solution for reducing emissions. Now, you know many countries, developing countries and rather underdeveloped countries, electrification is still a big issue, including that of India also, and most of the so called Asian giants or giant economies, big economies. So, this is however is taking shape in a very nice way, and increasingly it can be sourced at the lowest cost from the renewable energy. So, basically electricity from renewable energy, that is how it is being envisaged. So, there is a something called a ton of oil equivalent. So, it is a unit of energy basically defined as the amount of energy released by burning 1 ton of crude oil. So, let us understand the energy classification, how energies are being classified. So, primary and secondary energy, commercial and non-commercial energy, renewable and non-renewable energy. So, primary energy sources are those that are either found or stored in nature, as for example, coal, oil, natural gas, biomass, nuclear energy, all these things. Secondary energy is mostly converted in industrial utilities into sources, energy sources. So, coal, oil and all these things. So, when you talk about commercial and non-commercial energy, so in commercial energy it is electricity, lignite, coal which are commercially available, and in non-commercial is basically firewood, cattle dung, agricultural waste, your biogas and all these things, and including wind energy. So, then renewable and non-renewable. So, in renewable sources that are essentially inexhaustible. So, they are wind power, solar power, geothermal, tidal, biomass and hydroelectric power, and non-renewable energy is conventional fossil fuels such as your coal, oil, gas which are basically depleting with respect to time. So, if we look at the energy mix of world and India, okay. So, I will be showing so many of these basically stats which are taken from this Environmental Energy Association, and there are other societies also, and now this has been from Niti Aayog. So, you can see that energy mix of the world, you can see how much is actually being consumed in the entire world in the form of oil and coal. So, they are the most important. Okay. So, if you look at India, 58.1% is nothing but it comes from the coal. Okay. It is a very big number. So, rest is oil and very few is from hydroelectric and other sources. Now, renewables you can see 2.2%, it is slowly increasing and we project that around 2035 2040 it will be more than 10 to 12%. Now, let us understand the world total primary energy supply, consumption and demand by source and region. So, this is the world primary energy supply from 1971 to 2017 by source. If you see that round one, okay, you can see that in 2017 coal is 27%, oil is 32%. So, these two are more than 50%, rest are all natural gas, biofuels, waste and other sources, and there are hydro and nuclear sources also. So, similarly, if you see by source, so again you can see that oil is the major one. Okay. So, this is the consumption pattern, okay. Consumption pattern by source. So, oil is the major, followed by natural gas, electricity and biofuels. So, this is the supply in terms of the region. Okay. You see there is something interesting, you can see from the round one, China accounts for 22%, only China accounts for 22% and OECD countries is 38%. India actually lies in the red one, okay, which is non-OECD Asia in that 13.5%, out of which India is almost more than 50%, it is a very significant number. Okay. So, China, India together are supplying the huge amount of energy required in the total global energy supply. So, if you talk about the final consumption, again OECD followed by China and followed by the non-OECD, the same pattern, the energy consumption pattern as well as energy supply pattern is almost same. So, if you look at this particular slide, this talks about top 5 countries total primary energy supply. So, if you go by sector, then you can see the People's Republic of China is stands in the first one, followed by United States of America, India, Russian Federation and Japan. Now, if you look at this one the second plot that side, so you can see that China's steel consumption is actually a huge dependent on coal, followed by oil and natural gas and renewables, and India it almost follows the same pattern. Okay. However, you can see that in India the renewables is increasing day by day. Okay. So, that is very interesting and that is because of the government of India has so much of thrust and excellent policies on actually renewables basically. So, if you look at this again top 5 countries total primary energy consumption, you will see that China as actually iron steel followed by chemical and petrochemicals, followed by non-metallic minerals. These are basically industry based consumption pattern, and India also it is following the same trend, except that chemical and petrochemical is a very small one and a non-specific industry is more, because of this non-specific, under that basically your small scale industries comes up, and you know in Indian economy small scale industries play a very big and crucial role. So, what if the world continues on its current path with no additional changes? Okay. So, what if we reflect today's policy intentions and targets? This is the stated policy scenario or the new policy scenario, what we are going to adopt basically the NPS. Okay. And there is something called a SDS, which is basically meeting the sustainable development goals, okay, or we call it sustainable development scenario. So, whether it is a NPS and SDS or both. So, this is how actually now things are being decided. So, if you look at the global total primary energy demand that is going to have a plateau after 2035 projection basically, even if there is a strong population expansion as well as economic growth. Okay. So, if you look at this, the global total energy demand will have a plateauing effect at 2035, beyond 2035. So, primarily driven by the penetration of the renewable energy sources into the energy mix. So, as and as there more renewables are coming into picture, they are taking a big thrust of the entire energy supply as well as consumption pattern also. So, you can understand that that is why actually there will be a plateauing effect after 2035. So, also falling energy intensity offsets the effect of a growing population with increasing income levels, leading to a slowdown in the energy demand growth. So, energy intensity actually falls as service industries take up large share of the global economy, right. So, that is what is happening in most of the developing countries, where the service industries are playing a big role in the economy, as well as in every this so called energy consumption basically. So, if we look how the projection looks actually, so you can see that there is something interesting here. So, despite a doubling of global GDP between 2016 and 50, global primary energy demand actually grows by 14%. Okay. So, this is a projection towards 2050, which you can see here, right, 2050. So, it is the first time in history that growth in energy demand and economic growth are decoupled, right. So, this is very interesting. So, the first uptake of renewables is a key driver, as they often substitute fossil fuel based generation technologies with low efficiency. So, renewables complemented by nuclear power basically will almost double their share in the overall energy mix. So, from 19% to 34% and will provide more than half of the electricity by 2035. So, what we understand from this particular slide is that renewables along with nuclear power is going to substitute almost 50% of the total energy supply after 2035 in most of the countries. So, if you have a understanding of the total primary energy supply by 2040, this is prediction, right. So, you can see that if we look at this one coal is continuously getting depleted. Okay. And similarly, the natural gas, though it is taking a up shape, then after 2035 it will slowly it will come down. Okay. Similarly, there are other sectors also, and if you look at the sector wise, so we will understand that in a sustainable development scenario, so industry, transport, building and agriculture, these are the major shares. Okay. And if we look at the new policy scenario, it is all the same thing, only the net amount or the net percentage varies little. Okay. Otherwise, they usually complement each other, the sector wise. Okay. So, this is the global energy demand in stated policy scenario. So, if we have you can see there is something interesting how the wood is getting decreased. Initially long back when we started, okay, early 18th century. So, you can see that the wood was the primary source of energy. Slowly it get depleted and the use of coal has increased, and then oil has come into picture. Now, slowly fossil fuel is depleting. So, we have to depend more on the nuclear and modern renewables, and so those are taking the major amount of the energy supply and of course, demand also. So, global energy demand per fuel, if you look at, you see that in this particular plot, you see that renewables and other fuels after 2035 here. Okay. So, every other thing, whether it is gas, oil or coal, it is getting depleted or getting a plateauing effect after 2035, but renewables is increasing, right. So, this is what it says us that due to the policy intervention by most of the government across the world. So, there is more focus on the development of renewables. So, that is why renewables and other fuels, that is taking a steady curve, or the curve is okay, increasing, that is not depleting. Okay. So, this is bit interesting. If you look at this is about electricity, right. So, if you look at this particular slide, this and this, you just understand that 36% of oil, 14% coal, 16% of natural gas, only 19% electricity. Okay. Now, as you move beyond 2016, this is up to 2016, okay, and as projected to 2050, you can see electricity is going to take the center stage with 49%, 50%, half of the main energy source will be by electricity, followed by the modern biomass, bioenergy, what we are going to discuss in our lecture basically in this course. Okay. So, you can understand how the policies actually are driving all the global major economies okay, including the small economies also across the world, to focus on the renewables and including that of the electricity. So, mostly it will be electricity, and again electricity, it can be hydropower, it can be this one your nuclear power, or it can be from other renewables also. So, this particular slide tells us India along with China, okay. So, emerges as the key driver for global energy markets. Another interesting observation is about the Africa, the entire Africa, okay, African countries. Okay, the last one you can see that, you can see here how China and India are taking shape in 2000, this is projection till 2040. This is total population by region, okay. So, in China, India and Africa, Africa means Africa continent, okay, not South Africa, right. You see their projected oil demand, see their natural gas demand. India is falling in the natural gas demand because we are not yet we are not moving into the gas, natural gas basically. However, China has surpassed all of us, and if you look at the renewables, you see India is playing a interesting role, very big role, okay. So, and of course, Africa also, okay. So, we will see different energy sources, their supply, consumption and demand by source and region. We will just quickly glance through it. So, first one is crude oil. So, you can see this how the world oil crude oil production from 1971 to 2000 by region. This is by region, and this is you can see there OECD of course 26.8% by the and Middle East. So, OECD and Middle East is more than close to almost 60%, rest is non OECD Europe and Eurasia, then China, Asia and other countries. Okay. So, mostly it is coming from the Gulf countries and OECD countries. So, if you see the final consumption from this one 1971 to 2070 by sector. Okay. So, you can see that road, you please see that this one, okay. The road is almost the transportation sector basically, it is 14.92%, okay, followed by navigation, aviation and non-energy use sector. Okay. So, similarly, if you see the refinery output, okay, so you can see that mostly it is coming from the middle distillates, right, followed by the motor gasoline, fuel oil and then LPG, ethane, naphtha and other products. So, let us now understand the oil demand growth, how it looks like beyond 2030-35 and till 2050. So, you can see that oil demand has grown more than 1%, okay, per annum over the last 3 decades, but this growth is expected to slow down significantly from 2020 onwards. So, from the current year onwards. The reason why, because of the more and more this one development of the electric based systems, okay, or we are depending more on the electricity rather than other sources of energy. So, there is a projection of a peak in 2033, beyond 2033 there will be a plateauing effect again. So, by 2050 demand is projected at almost 30 million barrel per day, which is 1/3 below today's demand, okay, as of now. So, the chemical sector, which is an important engine of growth for the oil demand, shows a slowdown with respect to this post 2030 projection. Why? The reason is that there is a increased rate of the plastics recycling, that is also very interesting now. So, you know that more and more plastic recycling is happening. So, that is why there will be a plateauing effect after 2030 in especially in the chemical sector. Now, when you talk about this one the chemical sector, so more than half of the oil demand growth will be for the next 15 years. So, until 2035 chemicals is the biggest demand growth sector, then there will be a plateauing effect. So, oil use in power is the largest declining sector beyond 2030-35. So, the decline in oil demand for the road transport is modest as the EV is coming into picture. There are two things, first is EV. EV is the electric vehicles basically, mostly it is there is a huge transition in the OECD countries, they are almost going to going for the EV, they are already doing it, and China is partially offset by continued use of the ICU vehicles. So, though the OECD countries are going more into the EV, however, China being one of the largest economy in Asia as well as by population or by energy use as well as consumption anything. Okay. So, it is very big. So, still China is going to continue with the IC, that means the internal combustion engines vehicles. So, that is why in Asia it will be little less. Okay. Aviation growth is most prominent in non OECD Asia and hub countries such as Dubai. Then let us understand coal. Okay. So, if you look at the total final consumption from 71 to 2000, 1971 to 2000 sector, you will see that oil is 41%, followed by electricity, then natural gas, and interestingly you see biofuel 10.17%, it is a big one. Okay. So, it is up to 2017. So, understand that beyond that how the biomass based industries, biofuels and other biofuels that is coming from other sources, waste sources is going to shape up our economy. So, the world production of the coal by 2018, if you look at this. So, the round one you can see that China is almost half, okay, 45. India comes under the non OECD Asia, this red portion, and almost 30% to 35% under that is from India, and of course, followed by the OECD and other countries. So, here if you look at that this particular slide, you can understand that 40% decline in coal demand happens despite the substantial growth of coal use in India as well as other non OECD Asian countries. Okay. So, this is basically driven by China's decline in coal use. So, that is also very interesting, right, with a decline of 53 million TJ, this is equal to 2/3 of today's total demand in China. Okay. So, all these things are driven our focus towards renewables. Okay. So, then again we will just quickly see, we will understand natural gas, how actually the way we have discussed coal and oil. So, natural gas supply, consumption and demand. So, here also you can see that natural gas production. Okay. So, mostly it is by the non OECD Europe countries and OECD countries, more than close to 60% of course, and India has very minimal role to play in this particular thing. So, the final consumption, of course, industry is the most important one, followed by the residential areas, then commercial and public services. Then when you talk about this one the gas, natural gas. So, it is the only fossil fuel which grows its share of total energy demand. Okay. This is also you must understand that among all the fossil fuels, this is the only fossil fuel, the natural gas, whose demand is continuously growing for the various advantages it has, okay, over other fossil fuels. So, particularly in the short term till 2025 and then mid term 2035, gas demand continues to grow across all sectors led by industrial demand. So, the plateauing demand which is happening after 2035, you can see here, okay, almost there is a plateauing demand here. Okay. So, is driven largely by increasing the competition from the renewables. Okay. So, the oil and gas industry's own use of gas is expected to remain in line with the total gas demand. So, these are certain some of the things how the gas demand is going to take shape till 2035. So, the power sector, then China's gas demand growth is much more higher than any other countries. Middle East, the previously the growth region, gas demand in the Middle East peaks before 2030, and there is chemical sector and there is transport sector. So, the next is world electricity supply, consumption, demand by source and region. So, this is the world electricity generation from 71 to 1971 to 2017 by fuel. Okay. So, mostly it is from coal, just like in India it is the national thermal power plants, and they supply a major portion of the electricity, followed by hydro, natural gas and nuclear. In India also nuclear is also slowly taking shape, and the electricity generation by region. So, if you look at that, OECD is the major component, giving the major share 43%, followed by China. So, OECD countries, China is almost more than 60%. India again comes under that non-OECD ASEAN countries. So, this is the total electricity consumption, okay, by sectors. So, the industry of course close to 42%, rest another 40% is almost here, sorry, another yes, 50% is almost here residential and commercial and public services. Okay. So, if we talk about nuclear electricity production, you can see that this is interesting to note that 75%, close to 75%, it is all by OECD countries. Okay. That is mostly the European countries, including United Kingdom, France and other things, and as well as United States also. And non-OECD Europe is almost 12%. Asia is lagging behind in this nuclear power sector, but slowly China, India and other countries are developing their nuclear power sector. Okay. So, this is hydroelectricity. Here also you see that OECD and China takes the center stage, followed by the non-OECD Asia, in which India comes into picture, and other American countries and African countries also. So, this is wind electricity. Again here also OECD takes the major share. Now, what we understand from these few slides is basically that when we talk about this renewables electricity, so the OECD countries have already taken a lead. Okay. Now, China is following them, India is also following them, and we are sure that beyond 2035 you will see a huge change in the total energy this one consumption pattern as well as source. So, this is solar PV. Okay. This is one sector in which the government of India is giving a lot of emphasis, and there are a lot of subsidies available to set up your solar PV systems, including small ones in the household sectors also, and people awareness is also increasing, and the government of India is also playing a big role in shaping up that particular sector. Then let us understand about the electrification areas, okay, across the key end users. So, if you see this particular slide, you can understand that electricity demand doubles until 2050, and this is how it has been projected, and the policies are also like that. Okay, and it grows in its share total energy consumption from 19% today to 29% by 2050. Okay, as demand for other fuels are flattening. Other fuels means the fossil fuels. So, the increasing adaptation of the electric vehicles, that is also leading to this particular surge in electricity this one demand. So, in transport sector, electrification is driven by strong improvement, okay, by economics of the electrical vehicles, reaching cost parity with conventional fuel vehicles in the early 2020. This is how, what is the actual aim of this OECD countries, that they want some sort of trademark or cutoff with the cost when comparison to adaptation of the EVs, electrical vehicles. So, you can see that future improvement in battery technology, okay, that is also very important. Huge amount of research is still going on, okay, will enable the electrification of the heavy duty segments, which are currently hardest to electrify. Okay. So, renewables will become cheaper than existing coal and gas in most regions before 2030. Then you will be forced to switch over to renewables, even if you are not ready to adapt it. Okay. So, that is going to happen by 2030. So, the majority of the countries will reach this tipping point in the next 5 years, including that of India, but anyway in India we are already into renewables, and our renewable production is much higher than other countries, okay, other developing countries. So, as a consequence, by 2035 nearly half of the global total capacity will be in solar and wind, and with China and India both are taking the center stage, or they are becoming the main contributors. Okay. That is very interesting. Okay. So, solar and wind account for close to half of the global capacity by 2035. China, India and OECD countries are the major contributors. Then gas natural gas. Okay. See a further capacity additions, particularly in North America and China. So, global net additions of 675 GW until 2035, right. So, coal capacity declines because most of the countries there is a decline in production, of course, that is true, as well as decline in adaptation or use also. And in India, the role of coal to supply and the rapid uptake in demand is much smaller than in the earlier projections. So, that is actually good, as solar in particular becomes a more attractive alternative. As I told you that Government of India has given a huge this one policy, has a big policy, as well as is giving so much of subsidies also to set up solar PV systems, okay, including that of the rooftop solar PV systems in the for the household use also. So, renewable generation accounts for more than 50% of the power supply post 2035. So, this is what is the NPS and SDS both complement each other. So, you can see this particular slide, you can see that how from 30 onwards, okay, there is a huge increase in the solar. You can see that yellow one, the solar, how it is increasing, followed by the wind and hydro. So, this is how we are going to focus, including India. The major focus will be mostly on the solar PV systems. Okay. Then of course, solar thermal is also there, wind energy, hydro energy and nuclear energy. Okay. So, all renewables basically. Now, let us just quickly understand since this is introductory class about the global environmental issues. Okay. So, we will talk about only the carbon dioxide emissions and climate change. So, the trend in long term global warming continued in 2018, which also happened to be the fourth warmest year on record. You know, this is since last 10 or 20 years, the warmest years basically occur in the past 22 years, and the top 4 in the last 4 years only. Okay. So, that is very bad. This is according to the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. The IPCC special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degree centigrade reports that for the decade 2006 to 2015, the average global temperature was 0.86 degree, okay, above the pre-industrial baseline. Now, for the most recent decade, that is 9 to 2018, the average temperature was 0.93. So, it is almost going to be 1 degree. Okay. And for the last 5 years 14 to 18, it is 1.04 degree centigrade. So, the last 4 years consecutively 2019, 18, 17 and 16 are the hottest or warmest years till date. Okay. So, as a result of this there is a huge increase in the number of cyclones that is affecting the entire northern hemisphere and in northeast Pacific basin, as well as even the Indian Ocean side also. So, in July and August of 2018, north of Arctic Circle, many record high temperatures were registered, as well as record long periods of high temperatures. Japan, Republic of Korea saw new national heat records 41 and 41.1 and 41 degree centigrade. It's a huge temperature they have never witnessed in their entire life span, the people who are currently in this one Japan and Korea. So, Eastern Australia also experienced significant drought during 2018. Severe drought affected Uruguay, northern and central Argentina in late 2017 and early 2018, leading to heavy agricultural losses. Now, British Columbia and Canada broke its record for the most area burned in a fire season for the second successive year. The US state of California also suffered. So, these things we know, right. So, these are all have been reported in the news, and we know all these things. So, these examples show that climate change is not a distant or future problem, rather it is happening since almost 20 to the 2 to 3 decades, and now this is the peak time that we are facing and so much of global climate change is taking place. Okay. So, this slide will basically tell you the environmental impacts of various sources of electricity generation. So, coal, natural gas, nuclear, wind, solar, water is basically the hydropower, and then water, that is the streaming hydropower. So, what are the environmental effects? If you look at wind, so there is a potential of the bird killed. So, wind turbines, okay, highly visible, and the noise issues are also there. Similarly, if you talk about solar, though it is very good, but there are issues regarding high energy used in the manufacturing process when you make solar PV, and there is a toxic silicon tetrachloride waste. Similarly, flooding is a problem in hydropower dams, and but all these so called environmental impacts also can be properly minimized if we take sufficient precautions, and that is what it is being done nowadays by most of the countries, and they are adapting that safety measures and latest technologies, so that the impact on the environment will be very minimal. So, if you look at the world carbon dioxide emission, you will see that oil and coal are the major emitting sectors, followed by the natural gas. And China and OECD are again because they are the largest consumers, so of course, they will be also be the largest emitters. So, if you look at the heavy industry sector, the projection from 2019 to 60 says that basically if you look at the last one 2060, from let us see the from the first one 19, 30, 40, 50 and 60, you can see that the industries, okay, which are unlocked emissions, that is increasing. See, you see that here these are all industries which are emitting hugely, okay. So, slowly it is decreasing, unlocked emissions are increasing, then unlocked emissions increase, then 2050 all this gone, and 2016 that is also gone, okay. So, this is how it is projected basically. So, if you look at this particular slide, it says that global carbon emissions peak in 2024 and there is a fall by 20% by 2050. So, primarily driven by the reduction in the emissions from the coal. So, the coal emissions is gone, once that is gone, okay. So, almost 20 to 30% of the global carbon dioxide emission will drop immediately, okay. So, there will be a excellent balance of the carbon dioxide that is began that is actually being emitted by the developed and the developing countries. So, if you look at the developing economies in Asia, there is a huge actually percentage statistic wise, other developing economies and advanced economies. So, this the coal based plants basically, okay, and solar is becoming the star, okay. So, you can see this is very interesting, you see the how the curve actually increasing from 2000 to 2040, it is a prediction basically, which is going to be absolutely true as it is, okay. There will be absolute the unit values may differ, but the curve will remain so, okay. And apart from there are other wind, hydro and nuclear is nuclear, the biggest problem in nuclear is the safety issues as well as the installation cost. It is a very costly this one technology basically, but once it is established it is very good, okay. So, a carbon neutral Europe puts offshore wind in front. So, this is about Europe, okay. You see here in Europe there is something interesting about this bioenergy. 2018 you see that how it is slowly increasing by 2050, okay, though not a very significant jump, okay, but the adaptation and maintaining it, that is okay, is also very important. So, in Europe the offshore wind is going to take a major role, solar will be less, okay, because there in Europe you know that availability of the solar power or the sunlight is much lesser than other countries, especially with respect to the Asian countries. Now, having said that, there is no singular simple solutions to reach a sustainable energy goal, okay. Every countries are putting their efforts. Now, a host of policies and technologies are required and it is already there, policies are there, technologies are also be there. So, to keep the climate change targets within the reach and further technology innovation will be essential, so that we do not go beyond 1.5, though the Paris agreement says 2 degree centigrade. However, most countries have agreed that they will try to keep it not more than 1.5 degree centigrade. So, before we end up our lecture, we will quickly understand the focus of our course, okay. That is the biomass energy, okay, or the bioenergy. So, let us understand what is the bioenergy potential across the world. So, you can see that in 1980 how it what it was, 2015 what it is, 2050 what it will be, and this is the world primary energy demand, and this is the bioenergy demand, it is projected, okay. 2050 C and D. So, C is based on the upper limit of the amount of biomass that can come available as a primary energy supply without affecting the supply of food crops, okay, basically from agricultural residues and all, and D which is this one, okay. So, that is based on the source where a typical type of agricultural management supply applied management applied is similar to the best available technology in the industrialized regions, okay. So, you can understand that there is a huge upsurge in the biofuels and bioenergy based this one supply, okay. So, this is contribution of each biomass resource category to the global potential of biomass for energy use in 2015. So, what are these different types of feedstocks? We can talk about feedstocks. So, biomass production on surplus agricultural land, biomaterials, biomass production on degraded land, agricultural residues, animal manure, basically dung. So, you go for biogas basically, forest residues, tertiary residues, organic waste, okay. Then you can see that energy used in the transport sector, non-fossil oil globally. So, biofuels is going to take almost 73% beyond 2050. Similarly, heat production also 96%, so huge, okay. By from renewables in 2007, this is 2017 data. So, domestic supply of biomass globally. So, you can see how it is. So, primary solid biofuels is 86%, okay. Still it is same, right. Slowly biogas and liquid biofuels are coming into picture. So, liquid biofuels is gaining more importance because of its availability issues. Actually, availability is can be around the year, okay, rather than biogas, or biogas during winter has a depleting supply basically. So, biopower generation globally, how you can see this, and this is the 2017, you can understand that the components that is being considered is municipal waste, industrial waste, solid biofuels, biogas and liquid biofuels. You see solid biofuel is taking the center stage. Now, slowly liquid biofuel will also coming into the picture, especially in European countries, whereas in Asia it is very less. However, slowly it will Asian countries are also catching up. So, use of biomass in electricity, only plants in continents in 2017. Okay. You can see the Asia solid biofuels, again the huge surge, okay, and bioheat generation globally. Okay. So, this is with this we will wind up basically. Okay. So, this is liquid biofuel production globally. So, you can see bioethanol, biodiesel and other biofuels. So, this is bioethanol, okay. This is biodiesel and then other biofuels. Other biofuels, it can be bioil, it can be bioethanol, it can be biobutanol and other biofuels. Okay. So, other liquid biofuels basically. So, what we understand from today's lecture is that no single or simple solutions exist to reach the sustainable energy goals. Okay. So, energy policies are adjusting to new pressures and imperatives, but the overall response is still far from adequate to meet the energy security and environmental threats the world now faces. The oil and gas landscape is being profoundly reshaped by shale, ushering in a period of tense competition among suppliers and adding impetus to the rethink of a company business models and strategies. Solar, wind, biomass technologies are transforming the electricity sector, but an inclusive and deep transition also means tackling legacy issues from existing infrastructure. Energy is vital for the developing countries and their energy future is increasingly influential for global trend as it undergoes the largest urbanization the world has ever seen. One classic example is the African countries. Okay. The way urbanization has taken place in African countries after 2000 is phenomenal, and all have a part to play, but the governments must take the lead in writing the next chapter in energy history and steering us onto a more secure and sustainable course. So, thank you students, thank you for listening. So, the next class will be again introduction. So, that in the next class we will understand about our biomass, what is actually the biomass, and what is the biomass, what the actually biomass based industries looks like, and biorefinery concept. Okay, I will explain you the biorefinery concept. So, thank you very much. In case you have anything to ask me, please feel free to write to me at kmohanty@iitg.ac.in, or please post your questions in the NPTEL SWAYAM portal. Okay. So, I will be happy to answer that. So, thank you very much.